So I was watching some of the US weekend shows, and the question came up, what do Europeans think of Donald Trump's demand that its allies should support him in the Straits of Hormuz? Now, welcome to my podcast, One Opinion from Europe. And today I will be taking a look at this question. And in fact, I think my answer will be more of a rant than a clear answer. I was quite incensed by this development. Generally, we can say that this war was started by Donald Trump and Bibbi Netanyahu. They started it without consulting any allies whatsoever. They started it without consulting even the closest Gulf states who have been seriously impacted by Iran's retaliatory military strikes and its drones. These strikes were only to be expected. And also what seems to have surprised them is that the Straits of Hormuz, which are a major shipping way, are now being targeted by Iran. Furthermore, it would appear that there was certain surprise at the volume of drone strikes coming from Iran. Now, for me as a European, this is just completely not understandable. We have had 4 years of Russian-Ukraine war, and we all know that Russia has been supported immensely by Iran sending thousands of Shahed drones. We know that Iran has this technology, and the Shahed drones are relatively quite cheap. So why has Donald Trump and his merry band of incompetence been surprised that the Iranians have bombarded the Gulf states with drones? A week ago, President Donald J. Trump told Britain not to bother sending ships to the Middle East because he'd already won the war. So there you go, Donald. You do not get any support from Europe. Donald Trump's disdain for Europe has always been very clear, which is quite strange because his descendants come from Europe. His mother, in fact, came from Scotland, and his grandfather fled Germany during the World War because he also did not want to be called up. So that is something which obviously runs in the Trump family. Donald Trump constantly expresses his disdain for Europe. And it became very clear, especially in the tariff trade war, that even the appeasement route, which Europe originally started, was not having any effect. And he was very much enjoying his extortion racket on the Europeans. Then he went one step further and decided he was going to invade Greenland, which belongs to Denmark. And this really has had a very detrimental effect here in Europe on his standing, if there ever was one. Eventually, our European leaders finally realized that the only way to handle a bully is by directly confronting him. And this is what they did. They said, okay, if you want a tariff war, we're going for it. And if you're going to militarily invade Greenland, we will be sending our military too. And of course, Donald Trump, in good old taco fashion, then backed down. So that was only 2 months ago. And now Donald Trump has the temerity to demand that we support him in his war with Iran, which he started on his own or with his buddy, corrupt and war criminal Bibbi Netanyahu. So why should we send our people, our military service people, to support Donald Trump? He obviously has never shown any appreciation, any loyalty. He does not value our support or our culture. So there is the feeling over here in Europe that we are definitely not going to support the US. However, it must be clearly stated that we are being impacted significantly by these actions. Our gas price has gone up at least 30%. And of course, the increase in gas prices has a knock-on effect on all sorts of prices, not last but not least, flight costs. Furthermore, here in Europe, we very much appreciate Formula One racing, and due to these activities in the Middle East, both the Bahrain and the Saudi Arabian races, which were due to take place in April, have been cancelled. So what benefit whatsoever do we get from supporting the US? Well, if we could assist to get more oil out of Iran or out of that region, maybe the prices for us would go down, but that would yet be to be seen. I mean, we have also been greatly incensed by the fact that Donald Trump has removed sanctions on Russia. This Ukraine-Russian war has been on our doorstep for 4 years, and Donald Trump has shown no commitment whatsoever to Ukraine. In fact, he has been asking them for their support with retaliation against the Iranian drones. Watching the BBC today, it brought a smile to me because there was an official saying that Great Britain was reluctant to send its forces on such a risky mission. Now, I love this British understatement. I think reluctant is very mild compared to the reactions that I'm hearing in my private sphere. Friedrich Merz has drawn a hard line regarding direct military involvement in a US-led conflict with Iran. Germany even did not join the Iraq war, and it actually lost about 56 military servicemen when it joined up with the US in Afghanistan. And Donald Trump definitely showed no appreciation for that. So the feeling here in Germany, where I live, is that we are definitely not going to risk any of our military or service people in this war. Like Merz, Mark Carney has resisted Trump's calls for allies to secure the Straits of Hormuz, preferring to coordinate with the UK and the Nordic allies on a diplomatic maritime corridor. So even at the start of the war, Emmanuel Macron, he offered his support for negotiations because France has traditionally still an open line of communication with Iran. But of course, Donald Trump prefers his comedy bunch of bozos, Steve Witkoff and corrupt Jared. So even though Europeans have tried to offer their support to give a professional diplomatic negotiation skills, so far we are not being taken up on it. There is one podcast which I often watch, and that is that of Chris Nordlund. He has an interesting biography. He was born in Vietnam, but actually grew up in America, and he's married to a Korean lady, and they are currently living in Korea. Now, most of his life was spent in America, and he feels very strongly and is very much affected by what he is seeing in America today. But he has a very calm and sane approach to reporting on the issues that he's seeing. And he also gives the South Korean perspective, which I find quite interesting. Now, when Donald Trump came into power, South Korea also very much tried the appeasement route and are now taking a very cautious and deliberative approach when Donald Trump is demanding their support. However, Chris today was showing some of the comments coming from the general South Korean public, and they were definitely not having any of it. So if you'd like to get a slight Asian view of what's happening, I would recommend that you take a look at Chris's podcast. I find it very interesting and informative. So wrapping up this rant, I would like to give you my one opinion from Europe. My opinion is that we should definitely stay out of any of this conflict. As much as it is hurting us by rising gas prices, flight prices, cancellation of sport events, it is nothing to do with Europe, and we should remain well out of it and refuse to support the US in this matter. As we have done in the past, we have given training support, or other maybe intelligence, but even that I would draw the line at. So I hope you have found my opinion to be interesting. Maybe it's a different point of view to what you have. I would be very interested to have any comments that you may have. Please click and subscribe, and I look forward to my next session, which I think I will be covering media. The US media, I think, is playing a significant role today in US politics. Okay, so thank you and take care. Bye.